Hey there everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the free 3D modeling course on YouTube. We're just making this simple holographic sight, and in the last episode we were working on, with Shift H, this base shape, and got a little more complex than I expected, but I think the hardest part of it is over. So we can start grabbing these vertices in the back and pushing them back. We can find out where we're going to meet up with the cylindrical shape. I'll press S, Y, and 0. So that all of these are in the correct position. And I'm going to use the reference image over here to check out what's really going on. So it does seem to have no extrusion on one side, but there is an extrusion on the other side. It looks like it's actually pulling out, so both are being extruded in a sense. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to add a cylinder, and I'm not too concerned about how many polygons it is. I think I am okay with 32. I'll press R, Y, 90, and we're going to try to fit it in here. Now check out this backside, and we'll extrude this outwards as well. We'll give that a good look and see how we feel about it. So I'm going to turn back the overlays, and it's looking pretty good, but we don't want to extrude it out just yet. We want to actually sort of join them together. But we had to ask how we're going to do that. So it also seems like I'm going to have to take this vertex here and use proportional editing set to linear so that I can move this outwards at an angle. So I'm going to try to match the angle really as best I can. Or what I'm actually going to do is just start cutting these pieces away, and then we can join them together. So I might have got one too many pieces away. Let's check out this and check out that. And I'll delete these. So now I'll select the cylinder and this and join them together. And it should have clipping on. So with everything in this cylinder selected, I'm going to start bringing it inwards. Now they should be merged together over there. So I'm asking myself how we're going to bring these together. And double checking that it's the right size. It is. So I could bring in one more edge loop this way. Maybe this is a situation where I press G and then snap along this vertex and it'll be right along there. Maybe press G and X and also snap it right along there. So I'm actually noticing that the top of this cylinder is pretty flat. So we can grab both of these vertices then and bring them to sort of around there. We can put a control loop and match it with this one. We could just start matching vertices together. So I'll add a new control loop. And I'll match it with this one if I can. And those aren't bad at all. I can match this control loop. Now we could even add more loops to this cylinder. And one by one, I could start matching them with their corresponding edge loop on the original model. So this is how we join things together in a union-like fashion without the actual Boolean operation. So this is true to life, professional workflow stuff. So we just added an entire cylinder type object onto the cube type object, and we can delete these faces inside. Maybe we can press A and merge everything that we have joined together. And I'd like to match the top with this. Or maybe opposite, and I'll drag the bottom down so that that is the actual apex. And that seems pretty cool. So these vertices actually match up to quads even if they don't look like it. Because if we turn on the X-ray, we can grab these four and press F to fill in that space. Then I can press F a couple more times and finish filling out that space. Now, if I look at the reference, it is pretty sharp around that corner, but it's still extruded inwards in a sense. So I'm building out the shape I see. I notice it's a little bit rounded, but at the same time not too round, so I'm going to tighten up that edge. And we're just balancing out those edges right over there. And I'll also make sure that these edges aren't creased, so I'll press Shade Auto Smooth. And maybe the top ones should be creased with a mark sharp, but the bottom ones shouldn't. Oh, and I have to make sure that the sharp on that segment is off. And now we can add 1 or 2 loops towards these corners to be able to round them out. So if I go to the top view with 7, I could start kind of smoothing out that transition. You know, everything in 3D modeling has multiple answers to it and a lot of different methods to approach it, but this is just one of the ways I eat an elephant, which is truly one bite at a time. So to fill out this space, it's going to be a little weird, but I think we can do it. I'll add a control loop near the bottom because I kind of want to create like a ring going on around it. So I could select every one of these pieces from the circle and extrude it inwards. I can move it a little, maybe with G and Shift X so we don't move the axis. And now I'll try to tie these polygons together with F. And if I extrude just the middle portions of this, right, now we have space to start filling in more polygons. So this looks pretty good. And instead of obsessing over what quads are supposed to go where with this type of, you know, open circular design, I'll actually just clear the sharp right there. What I'm going to do is select maybe this edge loop and then this edge loop with the control clicks. And I'll go to face and click on grid fill. Now it definitely didn't do it perfectly. So the thing about it is it's looking for like an even amount of loops to bridge between. And this is not an even surface. We could add a few more on this side. And then we can just select the whole thing and try to grid fill this. I think we need one more edge loop and I'll select them all and try that grid fill again. And now it seems like we have a better opportunity to get some automatic you know, quad filling within that selection. So that was pretty easy to do. However, I did eyeball the amount of edge loops I needed to fill that space. However, it totally worked out perfectly right there. We do have this extra one, but right now that's okay. I'm going to check out what we can do with these tighter edge loops over here. We'll use double G to slide things around and give them some space. We'll see where these ones are connecting. And we'll start giving these space as well. So it looks like we just have to kind of clean up the creasing and the sharps. So once I uncrease something, Control E and clear sharp. Crease this one and mark it sharp. Go ahead and look at our reference image. It's been a while. I'll hide it. I'll look at this and press X-ray. And that shape is actually working out really, really nicely. I know we're not going, you know, pixel to pixel on this, but I'm really enjoying the final result. And so I think, like we originally mentioned, we should also attempt to extrude these out. So let's see if it'll actually let me click on this. And I'm trying to see how I should best do this because something tells me I may not want an actual extrusion. I may just want to lift up these faces. So with the circle select, I can capture a lot of these really quickly. And I think I'll just press G and X. And if I add maybe 1 or 2 more edge loops to add some definition there. Maybe one closer to here. Yeah, that adds a really nice amount of definition. Maybe almost too much. Maybe we can bring it out and then sort of just, maybe just add one in the middle. And that seemed to have done the job pretty well. To clean up the actual form of this, I'm going to use the circle select one more time. And I'm going to hide our other objects. And what I'd like to do is scale them on the x-axis. So SX 0. Let's make sure it's completely flat. Then we can grab this edge, SY 0. Do that a few times. And if you want to repeat an action that you just did, even though I don't use this often, let's press, for example, let's say we just scale this along the y-axis. The reason I don't use it a lot is because control clicking something will reset that. But for some reason, if you were clicking between all of these, you could press Shift R and that will repeat that last action. So it actually just scaled all these on the Y. However, like I said, if you control click, it automatically thinks of that as the last action. So kind of annoying. I'm actually going to keep this crease. I think it's holding the form pretty well. Looks like we'll have to mark this one as sharp. We're just looking at how we can best treat this model. Perhaps we'll make sure that these last couple of faces are flat on their x-axis, and then balance the rest of them out from there. So I think that fills out the shape a little bit more. I'm gonna also feel free to show you me cleaning up these edges so that when I turn the camera, we still have nice shapes in our model. So I'll unhide that. And we have that backside done right there. That's really cool. So before we get started on the bottom, why don't we get started on some of the buttons? We'll work on our first screw. And I think if we go to the front view, we might notice that there is another screw in here. But we'll probably just copy these screws, make it wider, and then paste it in there. So yeah, we see these holes in here, and we're gonna cover those with the screws. So we're gonna check out. Let's do this side first. So we have a couple different types of screws. We have 1, we have 2, 3, and 4. And let's actually check out the other side. And then the other ones are buttons. So the best way to get started is to just get started. What I'm going to do is create them at the world origin, and then we can move them and duplicate them onto the object itself. So I'll actually just start with a circle. I think for the screws, I had them at 24. And I'm scaling it down, and I'll actually apply the scale so it behaves appropriately. I'll go into edit mode, and let's go to vertices, and I'll extrude all these vertices up. It's giving us the red normals, so I'll flip that right away. And now I'm just going to take these top vertices and scale them in with E and extrude. I'm looking at how it has these little stars. Let's see if we could do anything about that. So I'll definitely scale it in a little, and I will scale it in one more time like this. Now if I go to top view, looks like I'll have to be a little more careful. And I'm going to try to make it so I get like 6 extrusions. The way I can do that is maybe selecting all of these edge rings with Control Alt and click. Then I can go to select and maybe check or deselect, and deselect every 2. So with that, what would happen if I press S and Shift Z? So not bad. I don't know if it got it perfectly, so maybe we'll try this manually and select every other 2. There's a reason why I don't select these procedurally all the time. However, for something like a complex knurling pattern, it's definitely worth it. So I'll try that again, S Shift Z. I like that a bit more. We can actually S Shift Z that back out and press Control B and use our scroll wheel to define what we want the bevel to be like. I think that's pretty good, actually. What I didn't like is that it sort of dragged these edges out. Let's grab this whole ring and this ring, and I'll press SZ0. And I can press E from there, and now it sort of gave me a buffer. And now I can deselect these faces and just extrude out from there, so I get that barrier of protection with the extrusion. So I'm not sure if I extruded it twice, but I'm going to press A, M, and distance, and it's going to remove any double vertices I may have actually made. And from there, I can just select these loops right here and give them a little bit of a bevel. Just 2 or 3 should do the trick. And I'll press Shade Smooth or Shade Auto Smooth, and that'll look pretty decent. We can add an edge loop, and what we could do is delete these bottom rings, and then in each of these gaps, I'll use the F key to fill it. So I'm selecting all these verts, and we have our first little screw. Then we could just select this entire inner portion after we've filled those gaps. And I'll press E, S, and then I'll press E, S, M, and center. I'll do that again for this bottom. So I'm going to go to edge select to get that a little bit easier. Grab the bottom edge and press E, S, and then E, S, and M. So I'm just observing the topology. I think it looks pretty decent, and I think it's ready to go into the model itself. Turn off our images collection. I'll hide our cutters. Now I can press RY90, move it out here, just scale it down. Now, if I turn on the images again, and go to X-ray, you can see how far we are from the actual interpretation of it. And it's really not too bad. So we keep it like that. And that screw is perfectly fine on this left side. If we want to make it a little bit more accurate, we could do that too. We haven't applied the transforms, so we're going to be able to rotate this and even go into local view or local transform mode if we need to. Perhaps I'll scale that up, just leave the tiniest gap. I'm just going to go ahead and press Alt-D now and press SX and -1, and that'll flip it to the opposite side of each axis. So now GX, and we can start moving this around appropriately. So scale this up, change the rotation a little. I'm using double R just to shimmy it a little bit, because remember, this isn't perfectly symmetrical because we did turn off that mirror, but whatever discrepancies there are shouldn't be a big deal. And in case you're curious, I did decide that we are going to make this a low poly model. So we'll notice there's a bit of faceting here, and all we have to do is rotate it. And now the 24 edges match the 24 edges of this other one. We'll do the same for this screw. And I'll check the other side. And I'll have to do maybe the same for this screw. We'll see. I'll press R and Y. And our screws are in place. Now we can work on this second screw. So just gotta hide everything, make a new circle, and I wouldn't mind this circle being 32. So let's try that out. And in edit mode, we'll make it smaller. So for this one, what I might do is try out the grid fill first. If I just select this whole ring and press grid fill, I'll click 7 to go to the top view and just see if using the span and offset, I can get something a little bit more directional like this. And it seems like I can. Now, if I hide all of these faces, grab this middle vertex and go to proportional editing and change it to smooth, or maybe even sphere, I should be able to get a round cap on this piece. And it looks like we did successfully. So I'll press Alt H, and that's really not too bad. Perhaps I'll scale it up here and bring this up. Let's check it out from the ground floor. We can close this with E and S, and then ESM distance, or ESM center. So that's a protection edge loop around our poked fan at the bottom. So I'm going to add some new edge loops at the top. I'll add one here, and I'll add one here. And I'm going to scale them on the Y-axis, perfectly proportional. So SY0. I'm just checking out the silhouette. Nice. And then for these middle vertices, we can go ahead and delete them. So we have this same pattern that we do right here. For now, let's go ahead and destroy these edges by pressing X and clicking dissolve edges. So now we don't have to work as hard. We'll take the edge vertices and we'll extrude them downwards. So E and then Z. Now we'll scale them flat with SZ0, GZ, and I'll use the vertex snapping to snap it right here. I can even just fill out these faces with F. And the F2 add-on should allow us to just make one quad right here. And then we can just press F a couple times to fill out this space. It looks like I shouldn't have destroyed this edge, but now we can press S and Y after adding a control loop, or S and X, and that should match better. We see these two vertices, and I'll press J. And now all that topology perfectly works together. You can even just bring these in for the sake of it. I'm seeing if we should add another control loop right here. Now, instead of beveling this manually, we're going to go ahead and try out the bevel modifier. Now, the result won't be perfect, but I think it's better to deal with a procedural bevel that we can turn on and off rather than actually going in and then beveling these and potentially messing up our topology and without being able to go back. So this satisfies the look I want. And if I press shade smooth We can check out how that looks. And that is pretty decent. It doesn't look bad. I might even clear this and shade auto smooth. And then I can grab the outer ring with alt clicking, and then I can mark this as sharp. Same with this edge. There's all sorts of ways you can blend perfectly smooth with pure sub D. You could do pure low poly with no beveled edges. You could have beveled edges with some n-gons. There's a lot of different methods, a lot of different philosophies, and depending on where you work, they're going to want you to do it a different way. And that's why I hesitated making this course, because someone might be disappointed we're not doing a pure sub D workflow, yada yada, but all sorts of methods. And for a beginner, I think it's most important to just learn how to get the shapes you want out of Blender and kind of force them out of there. So these screws can go, if I rotate them 90 degrees, these can start going in the middle of these holes. So I'll press G and X. I'll scale them down, bring them out. I'll rotate it to match it, and I'll just press Alt D, just in case we edit this later, we have access to this. Both of those look pretty good, and now I want to check out this similar one with a knurled pattern on the side. There could be a couple different ways we go about this, but that's one of the most interesting things about Blender, that there's a lot of right answers. Don't let someone convince you that there's a ton of wrong answers, you know? So I'm going to hide this and add a cylinder. And for a moment, I'm going to just try to count how many there are in one quadrant. So I'm counting about 10, which means that there's probably 40 of those patterns in total. If I don't want to mess up too much of the topology, I'm gonna go 40 as well. So I'm not gonna rotate this yet, because I'm gonna try a special technique that might work best from the top down view. First things first, I'll grab the bottom face and just drag it up. I'll drag this down and try to get some similar proportions around here. Now we notice that it does sort of come up before it goes completely flat. So if we consider these the sides, why don't we extrude both sides outward with E, S, and Z? And now we can press S and Shift Z and scale them in like this. And that creates that little bit of a chamfer. So I'll make sure that both of these are definitely marked sharp. And instead of doing a boolean for this large rectangular piece, we will try to model that in. So I'm going to get this edge loop, bring it in, and I'll just delete 2 of these. And I'll do that to the other side too. And we can delete this entire top face. So now we're going to see what we could do to rebuild this. We can bridge these across with the F key. We can also bridge these across with the F key. And we can bridge this last one with the F key. Now for now, we can alt click these entire loops and just press F. And that'll fill it with an n-gon for now. Now, let's see if my little idea works. Let's go into object mode, and I want to add a cube. Let's move it over here, and I'm going to turn on increment snapping just to make sure I'm not playing with decimal numbers right now. So first things first, I'm going to press S, Shift Z, and make this really small. Let's see if we need to move it back over. And it tapers inwards, so if I go into X-ray mode and grab these vertices, press SX, maybe some GY, make it thicker over here and thinner over here with S and X. Now we get a little bit more of a cut within here. Maybe we'll have it go into the chamfer without it actually protruding through it. So really close, but not too bad. And at first, what I'm going to try to do is press Control A, and I'm going to apply all the transforms. So that origin point is back there. So if I were to press R and Z, this little piece is now rotating around this ring. So I'm going to add a modifier called the array modifier. And it's been recently updated, so there might be a setting or two that I'm missing, but I hope I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and change this mode to the circle. And it is doing what I predicted it would do. It is spanning those across. So if I type in 40 now, we're seeing that it is arraying all 40 of those pieces across from here. Let's assume that they're in the correct position, looking like this. And really quick, it turns out we have to click on realize instances on this arrayed piece for it to be realized before we can press Control A and have it be applied. So now if we go into edit mode, all of these are now applied as the array, just like any modifier you apply. So for quick testing, I added it, but I'm going to add a Boolean modifier, and I'll add our array pieces to it. And now if I hide these, it is doing that knurling. So it's not even too far off from what the concept is. In fact, it has that same cut and everything. And we're getting really interesting patterns. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to press Control A so that all this topology is considered one. And there is cleanup we could do if we wanted to focus this course on pure sub-D modeling, but you know, we're just trying to build the shapes with multiple methods. So I'll press Alt H. We can delete this. I'll press R, Y, 90. Let's go ahead and add that button. We just rotate it any which way. And we hide these cutters. And so we have those buttons. We have those screws. We have this one. If I go to the other side, we have these other screws. And I think I'm going to add just this one last circular button before we move on. Not with a cube, but with a cylinder. I'm going to set it to 24. And I'll scale it down. For this button, it'll be really, really simple. Most likely, all we'll need to do is, because it's a softer button, we just add a little bit of a bevel. We change the shape to something like 0.5. And then I'll shade this with auto smooth, or maybe just completely smooth. And then I'll shade it with auto smooth, but I'll set the degrees to like 180. That way only this bottom face is smoothed out. So I'll press Control E, mark sharp. And I do like having some thickness to my objects, even if they're not rendered in the back, just in case I get into the idea of subdivision retopology or 3D printing or anything of that sort. So I rotated it towards us. I'm going to bring that back out. And we'll just match the button. We can even bring our images back, go into X-ray mode, and check out the size. And it turns out I had it just fine right before. So if I bring our cutters back really quick, I just want to double check the location of our square buttons. And these seem like something I want to bring back just a little bit. And then this had determined what the actual size of the holes were, and I wasn't really paying attention to that. So I'm going to hide everything on this side. And I'll grab just the inner parts of these, start bringing them back. Looks like it kind of mirrors the size of that. And this is a situation where we can use maybe individual origins to scale both down at the same time. And we'll definitely just be diving into the nitty-gritty details now that we've gotten this base shape completed. So excellent job so far. I really do hope to see you in the next video. You are awesome, and I'll see you soon.